Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's so nice to have you here today at USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, inspiration, and hope. I'm Dr. Jacalyn-Kerbeck, and our show today is The Resume Whisperer and Corporate Culturalist with Mr. JosefStetter, who is joining us from Canada. And today our topic is all about the value of asking better questions. Let's welcome our star, JosefStetter. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Nice to have you with us. I know you were out last week and we missed you. So how's everything going there with you?
Good. I had shoulder surgery and, had a torn labrum, which is the top of the shoulder. So had surgery last Wednesday and wasn't really in a state of mind to be able to go on a podcast on Thursday. So excited to be back today and share some wisdom a little bit from the other side. We've been spending a lot of time talking about the candidate side of finding employment, and now I want to look at it from the business side in terms of companies that are interviewing you, companies that are hiring you, and what they can do to better discern if you're the right candidate for the job.
Fantastic. So we're going to be focusing today on asking better questions. And I know sometimes people think more questions are better. Just pepper the person with one question after another, and maybe they'll slip up because you've given them so much. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that in this day and age, it seems that people have less and less time, and understand that if you're using the cookie cutter templated questions, you're going to get cookie cutter templated answer. And especially as I mentioned in the last few episodes, with the explosion of AI and technology, you have AI that's telling you how to formulate the answer. So employers need to be more proactive in changing the conversation, because if you ask, for example, tell me about this job, ChatGPT will script out exactly what to say. And so you're going to get a candidate that sounds like robot that go, oh, I was responsible for this and I did a little bit of this and I know how to do this and I'm a very good team player and blah, blah, blah. So, changing a few words in a question or creating the question to be more open-ended allows the employer to kind of discern if the information provided is enough or there needs to be a follow-up question. So, for example, most employers will say, tell me about this job or about this experience. And people kind of go into autoresponder mode and say, I'm a great team player, I'm hardworking, I'm dedicated, I love my job, I'm my duties were, my responsibilities were. Great, but that's not the question. So I'll change that question and say, what are you most proud of? Or what was your biggest achievement in your last job? Now, if your biggest achievement is you're hardworking, dedicated, committed team player with excellent communication skills, you might be a good worker, but you're not my superstar. You're not the person that's going to provide me more results, for example. So I can separate the quality of people by the examples that they give me and the results that they provide. So, just because you sold lemonade when you were 10 years old does not make you a salesperson. What's your track record in sales? What was your budget? What did you actually produce? Did you blow the results out of the roof kind of thing? Meaning, like in my personal career, as part of my sales cycle, if I start tracking from early on in my career when I worked retail, I sold 32 computers in one Saturday while working in a retail store that sells computers, compared to, let's say, 8 computers by everybody else. So I did more than 4 times that. When I got into recruiting, I sold for the company that I worked before I opened my own $760,000 in sales. My supervisor, who'd been there for 11 years, sold 140,000. She was there for 11 years. When I got into private education, I worked for a college that sold $530,000 in sales for the year. In 1 month, I generated $860,000 for them. And then progressing to, I built 2 call centers from scratch that are sales call centers. The last one was expected to generate an additional $350,000 for the year, with restrictions that my team calls leads that are more than 4 months old and further than 75, let's say about 50, 60 miles from the nearest campus. And the expectation was that my team, because they're doing phone sales, would convert at 1%. In less than 6 months, the team did $2.25 million and was converting at 9 to 10%, which, again, on the expectation of 300 to 8 times that in 6 months, I've built a track record that shows I understand sales, I understand how to build relationships, I understand sales in different industries, and I understand how to build a team because I did it myself and then I taught my team to get results that nobody expected. So in that progression in an interview, if somebody's hiring me to be a director of sales, they understand that it's not just my ability to perform sales, it's also my ability to lead a team to do the same. And I've answered that by giving specific results. Now, a good interviewer will go, okay, how did you create $2.25 million in sales? What was your strategy? And as a leader, I can explain that. That now proves the type of leader I am. And it kind of goes to your first question, where in 2 questions, they got all the details that they need. And if they need other examples from my sales career, there's plenty of them. But now they have a foundation of what or how they're looking for.
So many great points that you mentioned there. I do have a question since we're looking at it from the employer standpoint. So, in a good leader who's been in the position for a while or leading people know that there are only going to be so many top performers. And yet, people are coming in and they're giving you the best that they possibly can. Hopefully, they're showing themselves in the best light. So, what is it that an employer can do to find out, is this my gold star, or is this one of many who are going to be producing, they're going to be producing results, but they're not going to be the A team, which we still need to have B players as well, don't we?
So there's two parts to your follow up question with me, and here's the understanding: is number one, a good employer or a good leader will always give training, will always empower the team. So when I built the call center, I celebrated everybody's successes first. So I went person by person, and I asked them to share their successes for that week. And then as a team, we celebrate that, clapping, acknowledgement that they did a great job. Then I went and I asked my team, what were some of the objections that they got this week that they found difficult to overcome or kind of weren't as successful in terms of closing the sale? And rather than me with the title of director going, here's what you should do, I turned the question on my team and said, okay, so this individual said they struggle with this objection. What did the team members do when they faced that objection this week? And so rather than getting one opinion, there was now 10 opinions, for example. And I, as the leader, summarized what everybody said or reinforced that, everybody made great points. You should also maybe consider this or maybe consider that. And so there's a level where, if I use a sports analogy, the greatest players in the world, very few of them actually become coaches because there's a very big difference between being the player and explaining to other people what needs to be done. If I'm being hired in leadership, let's say to run a sales team, I need to prove that I can communicate how to get from point A to point B, that I can create training that takes a good producer and makes them a better producer, right? And part of that, and this is where this ties into corporate culture, is there a culture that celebrates both the individual achievements as well as the team achievements? Is there incentives, not necessarily monetary, to succeed in the sales? So, psychologically speaking, every human being seeks the three A's: to be accepted, to be appreciated, and to be acknowledged, which is why we all want to be loved, because when you're loved, all three of those come in spades. So, do I accept the effort? Like, as a leader, do I accept the efforts that my employee made? Do I appreciate the work that they've done? So even if they didn't get sales, but I can see that they built their funnel and we've scheduled a follow up, right? And do I acknowledge the work that they do? Because once that's set up, then it's very easy to track. It's very easy to pinpoint, you know what? You made here great calls, but you didn't follow up on them. And so you lost those sales opportunities. And again, depending on the sales cycle, depending on the amount that's being sold, the follow up can be a week later, the follow up can be 2 days later. It, again, like if you're doing IT sales, you're not following up every day because most IT sales are several $1 million. And so several $1 million decisions usually don't get made by higher level leadership within a day or two. So respect their time, respect their cycle that they need, let's say, a few days to meet and discuss and see how much they want to invest or not, and make sure that you understand that cycle and then schedule that and follow up and go back to the points that were discussed in the first conversation when you're following up, especially if there's hesitation, because the hesitation comes from, well, fear or this. So you should know how to address fear, how to address some of those concerns. And so, again, the art of changing the interview question. So, And this relates to most things in life. I mean, when I was singles and, I remember, I think from the moment I turned 25, I wanted to get married and have kids. And I've had girlfriends, but the value system, it's fun. Like, when you're first starting to date, it's fun, it's exciting, it's energetic, it's whatever you want to call it. But when you get to the 3 months, 6 months mark, as someone who always wanted to progress towards marriage, there were value questions that I need to start asking. And if those answers weren't there and there wasn't any opportunity or any understanding of those, I understood not the right person for me. Might be a great person, but not the right person for me. I met my wife coming up on 7 years, and we now have 2 kids. And I'm very blessed to be a father. It's something I've always wanted. But I think that the time has allowed me to better questions. So even on a date, when people go and they kind of go, "So what do you do? Where do you live?" And it's autoresponder. I'm an engineer. I live in this city or this state or whatever. Okay, change the question. What are you passionate about? Do you love your job? Even if they hate their job, there's a sense of emotion that comes out by changing one or two words in the question. And most interviewers that ask questions have like this check mark. They're looking for specific words, they're looking for specific phrases. So their questions are based on that. Like, I remember when I worked as a stock trader with a very large bank, and the interviewer asked me, "Are you empathetic?" And it was literally a yes or no question. And this is one thing that I've done that probably very few people in the job world will do. After three questions on this interview to work as a stock trader, I got so angry at my interviewer. I turned around to go, "Stop. You're asking me the wrong questions. You need to ask the following questions." And I took out a pen and paper and I wrote down about 10 questions. And then I slid the piece of paper to her. And she kind of looked me in the eye like, "Did you just tell me how to do my job?" And at this point, I didn't care if I got the job or not. I'm like, "Look at the questions." And literally, we had a stare down for about a minute and a half. After a minute and a half, she finally glanced at the sheet of paper, like read one or two questions, and looked at me like, "Who the hell are you?" Looked back down at the questions, read them, looked at me, went, "Okay, you're hired. I need to hire 25 more people. Can I please use your questions?" Now, again, this is because I've also studied the psychology interview. So asking me if I'm empathetic when people are going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in the stock market based on timing, because, for example, I worked as a stock trader when Nortel, which was a voice over IP phone system, went from $5 a share to $145 a share in an hour. And then 7 months later, when everybody realized that all their accounting was fake, this is around the time of Enron and WorldCom and all the other disasters that occurred. It went from $150 to $5 a share to $5 a share in an hour. And so the people that were waiting in line for an hour lost that very drastic change that occurred in an hour. So asking me a yes or no question on dealing with people that are upset that they lost money was redundant. So when I said, instead of asking me if I'm empathetic, give me an example of the most upset customer you've ever dealt with. What was the situation and how did you calm them down and resolve the issue? I can now demonstrate the level of empathy that occurred in order to serve the client, in order to keep the client. And so when the person at the bank looked at my questions and they understood the significance of the depth of the questions, they understood that I can give her the right answer for any question she's going to ask me.
There's a lot there that you covered. That's amazing. I love how you just took control of everything and said, "This is what you need to ask me." So many times, at least in my experience with the few jobs that I had, there were multiple people involved in the interview process. And so I know one of the things that you wanted to talk about today is about screening candidates so that you can actually get to the right person and the right fit, like putting together a marriage. So if you are 1 or 2 or 3 steps away from the ultimate decision maker, you are a screener, so to speak. You want to make sure that the people you're sending to the top who are going to be interviewed are basically at least checking off certain requirements that are there. So as a screener per se, maybe it's human resources, et cetera. What are some tips that you can give to people who are ultimately going to be making recommendations to turn this person over to leadership for an interview?
So many times, human resource actually has no clue what the actual job does. They just have a whatever knock code that is kind of government recognized. It says, here's kind of what the duties should be for this role. The better the questions are to ask about specific examples that use the STAR system, situation, task, action, result, the ADA system, the SMART system, but can explain specifically, I did A, B, and C. Here's the problems I solved or fixed. Here's why I made money, saved money, or increased efficiency. The less the executive that gets those notes needs to guess how good that person is, right? So get away from, questions that have been used for 40 years, like, tell me about this job, did you get along with all your coworkers? These are yes or no questions. Get away from yes or no questions. Start asking more open-ended question, right? There are ways that you can react to or see even the physiology of the question. So, a very common question is, how would you demonstrate teamwork? Most people automatically go, oh, I help my coworkers and, I take the time. Great. What does that tell you? So this person said they're a team player. Can you give me a specific example of how you helped a coworker? Give me the details of what happened, how did you get involved, and what was the solution? So, you can kind of see the sequence of the conversation, like, oh, this happened, the person couldn't solve it, so they shared it with me to look at. So first thing I did is I asked them, did you do this step, this step, this step? Now that I knew that they did those 3 steps, instead of repeating that, I was able to, based on my experience, go, did you try this, or did you try this? And I offered solutions that led to fixing the issue, for example. But the questioning is not, are you a team player? The questioning is not, tell me about this job. The questioning is not, what are the skills that you used in this job? The questions has to be results oriented. What was, let's say, the hardest part of this job? Why? How did you succeed in it? Now you're getting specifics. What were your 3 biggest achievements in the job? Give me details on each one, why they were so significant, or why you consider those to be the 3 biggest achievements. Now I can start measuring the level of the candidate's input. I mentioned this, I think, last episode and a few others. If you have people that become engineers and depend on ChatGPT or any of the other AI platforms to give them the answers, the AI can solve based on normal conditions. But Dr. Jacalyn, you live in Florida. If an engineer who has depended on ChatGPT now needs to deal with the fact that Florida has snow for 2 months straight, the entire system in Florida is not built for snow. So if they cannot account for variances, if they cannot solve for those variances, this is going to create a very dangerous world. And so AI can give you, here's, the STAR formula, here's ADA formula, here's SMART formula, here's how you kind of fill in the blanks for it. But if you don't have the resources to go, oh, wait, I did this, or maybe I should do this, this is where there's going to be a problem. Yes, AI tools can make things a lot faster and a lot more efficient. But in most industries today, the biggest gap that most employers are having, and this is in the learning management world, this is in kind of onboarding, this is in just overall Recruitment is soft skills. So you might have someone who's very brilliant technically, let's say as an accountant. And my clients have told me that today the millennials have learned how to memorize the textbook exactly or use some of the AI tools very, very efficiently. But the ones that get promoted to be partners, the ones that get promoted to leadership roles, are the ones that know how to communicate, are the ones that know how to do presentations, are the ones that can come up with solutions that are not obvious, put this in this box. So, as a business owner, Dr. Jacalyn, you have lunch or dinner with friends. How is that a business expense? How is that an investment in your business that can defer the taxes or minimize them because you're using this to get more people as part of the USA Global TV team, right? Again, it could be lunch with your best friend, but a good accountant knows how to use the 86,000 pages of tax code to your benefit so that you can go, oh, this should go under this expense and this should go here. And we're following these accounting rules. So this is within the parameters of what the tax code says is allowed. This is why larger corporations in the United States, and again, as a Canadian, I respect and admire the tax code in the US because the US tax code is 86,000 pages. The Canadian tax code is 6,800. Quite a difference. This is where in the US you can have an LLC to a C Corp to an S Corp, back to an LLC, back to this. And those are all structures that are recognized in the tax code. And as long as things are filed that this went to the LLC and this went to the S Corp, you can take advantage of a lot of tax breaks. And the very wealthy people have figured out how to leverage that very successfully. AI can give you the obvious solution that there's a lot of content for in terms of this. There's a lot of AI generated, resume experts that are looking at typical interview questions like, tell me about yourself. And they are regurgitating the formulaic answer. Now, they might have more energy when they present it than other experts, so people start following them and trusting them. But when I answer that or when I teach it to people, I try to explain to them the formula of thinking. I try to explain to them how they can separate themselves from everybody else. Employers need to do the same thing because anybody can write it. Anybody, even non-HR people, can go on LinkedIn or Indeed, copy and paste job descriptions and go, here you go, here's a job description for, let's say, a sales director. But if they're not honing in on those soft skills or the leadership skills, they're not honing in on the correct people. So, again, as you go up the ladder, you need to be able to do presentations. So there are various standards for presentations and communication skills. If I compare myself to somebody that I've admired for many years, like Les Brown, who as a motivational speaker has made tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, compared to him, I don't have excellent communication skills because I haven't generated the same amount of revenue yet. But I teach people communications. So I've attended Toastmasters, where in Toastmasters, as one of the things that they teach you is how many times you use filler words, and like, or in a conversation. And the more they count it, the more you start paying attention to your usage of it. And the more you start paying attention to your usage of it, the more you catch yourself doing it. And so, yes, we all have moments where sometimes there's an but if I'm speaking to you for an hour and there's one or two ums in the entire conversation versus every 2 minutes in the conversation, that is a very big difference in communication. But that is a standard that Toastmasters has done for over 100 years that corporations can now use to say, this is what excellent communication skills look like. So we need someone who has done the first 10 speeches of Toastmasters, or we need somebody that's learned these skills from Toastmasters, for example. And all of a sudden, this generic excellent communication request that's been around for hundreds of years has a quantifiable measure. I've met plenty of people that, under the standards of excellent communications, barely speak English, but they got hired. So why did they get hired if they don't have excellent communication skill? Because it's a term that's being thrown around. And so interviewers need to stop asking for these terms that are subjective and try to find real examples. So say you're hardworking. What does that look like to you? Can you give me an example? All of a sudden the conversations change because I'm not just telling you I'm hardworking, I'm giving you an example. And based on that example, you can ascertain if the example demonstrates the level of hardworking that you think is required. And if it doesn't, you can have a follow-up question. And if it does, you can move on to the next question. And I think this is the gap that's happening right now, is that we become so dependent on technology that the human factor gets eliminated. Most resumes are horrible. And so most candidates that only apply online and never have a human interaction might never get seen because they submitted their application late, their algorithm is not correct for their resume, they didn't format their resume a certain way, whatever variable it is, but no one's seeing them, but they might be great. This is, again, in the level of how the world's changing. If regular ways of meeting people doesn't work, there are now resources where pretty much every day of the week there's several networking events per day that you can attend, depending on your interest, depending on specific topics or whatever. And those could be sources for you. So it's a matter of being resourceful, both as a candidate and both as an employer, where as an employer, you're having more of a conversation and asking for specific details rather than kind of a standard answer. So as someone that's switched careers 9 times in their lives, like I worked for a private college where I created 10 different marketing strategies for them. By no means am I a marketer. By no means am I an expert in social media. I'm not. But I understand the messaging. I understand the ideas that need to be presented. And then I'm smart enough to hire people that are smarter than me in that specific field to communicate my vision or communicate my strategy. That's what a great leader does. And so HR, as a screener, needs to be more diligent in asking questions to get to the strategy and the vision, not the duties and responsibilities.
So many excellent points there. I'm not even sure where to begin, but I'll make this comment. As an entrepreneur myself, I know when I'm asking questions about people who want to have shows or they want to do something on the platform, I want to know that the person is coachable and that they could replace me one day, so that this platform is not just about me. So I bring this up because for people who are entrepreneurs who are hiring people or people who are in leadership positions, they may want to have someone, a succession plan where this person will take over for them so that they can move on. And that's a whole other series of questions, I would imagine. What are your thoughts about succession planning and also coachability?
Again, 100% coachability is there. And Dr. Jacalyn, I'll give you credit that you have a team that helps, let's say, create some of the video content, helps create the intros, helps create SEO and social media. Now, even if you hired somebody that promised you, within a 3 months bracket, let's say, you can kind of gauge where you are. So if, let's say, your YouTube account, I know that you crossed the million person mark, and that's amazing, and that's why I'm excited to be part of this platform. But here's the thing: if you're now at 1 million, and somebody says, "You and I are going to do succession planning. Here's how we're going to go from 1 million to 2 million views all organically, and it's going to take me 3 months to deliver this." At the end of 3 months, if they hit 1.8 million, and you're at 1 million, that's still 800,000 more organic. So clearly their strategy worked. But if at 3 months from now, you're at 1 million now and you're at 1.1 million in 3 months from now, their strategy didn't work. And yeah, sometimes that happens in life, and that's where you learn. And you, as a business owner, look and go, okay, we did this as a plan. Why did this plan work, or why didn't this plan didn't work? Were there things that needed to be added or needed to be changed that caused us to miss our targets? Right? If you surpass your target, great. This is working. Can we replicate this to get to 10 million people? As long as the strategy is working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if the strategy is not working, that's where you, as a visionary and as an entrepreneur and as a leader, need to come with a new strategy. It's no different in the business world when you have 25 employees, 50 employees, 100 employees, 1,000 employees, 10,000 employees, or 300,000 employees worldwide. Okay? If things aren't changing, it's time to change the strategy. So the leadership's job is to come up with the vision and communicate the vision to the lower levels. The lower levels, like the managers, their job is to go, this is the vision, this is what we need to execute it, this is the teams that we need to do it, this is the number of people we need to do it, and this is a time frame it's going to take to execute this vision. And so they then assign the different things. So on your team, you might have one person that does Instagram, one person that does Facebook, one person that does TikTok or whatever other tools are being used, or you might have one that does all three if they're efficient. And as long as the volume is growing steadily, they can continue to do all three. But when the volume starts slowing down, it is your responsibility as the entrepreneur, as the visionary, to say, okay, we need to make a change. Maybe right now we're too much here. And so I'm going to let you stay with this because you've done a really good job here. And I'm going to bring somebody to support you on this other pieces. This is why good businesses have great accountants and great lawyers and great specific, it's not one person does all. There are assigned roles and there's assigned duties and there's assigned responsibility. Yes, there's an overlap. Yes, there's cross-cultural kind of work, but again, I have accounting clients. I understand how to do accounting, but I don't want to do accounting. That's not what my brain is for. So I'll pay good accountants to do what they do and to do it well. As much as I'm fascinated by law and I love to read about regulations and so forth, I did not go study law. And so I have a business lawyer that looks at contracts and says, this sentence could come back to haunt you because in the legal world, this sentence means you don't have rights. So I pay for the lawyer, right? So again, as an entrepreneur, your job is to go, I need people can do this for me so that I can focus. So if your main focus is doing these podcasts, Dr. Jacalyn, then you need a team around you that can do the legwork that's required for the podcast to be successful, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
And so that's where, you need somebody that knows how to produce, let's say, technology podcasts that are streamed and so forth. You need to make sure there's little to no technology is not working today for us, kind of thing. And when it doesn't work, address it, make sure that it address it. And if it doesn't happen, like if there's no technology issues for the next 3 to 6 months, clearly the person that you hired is doing it right. With technology, there's always going to be things that happen, but it's an awareness of it kind of thing.
Absolutely. And it's been a fabulous show. And as technology is, if we're just going to get closed out. So Joseph, how can people reach you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So my name is written there. You can find me on all social medias with my names. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Facebook. As a whole, there you go. I just said which I mentioned earlier in my conversation. And again, I support both the individual job seeker and I support companies that are struggling to find great people. And I help them find them, not only find them, but know how to keep them correctly. with the right strategies.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's a great way to close out our show as we're closing in the next 10 seconds. So thank you so much for being here, Joseph. And thank you, everyone. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye for now.
The last few days have been really amazing. I had the trainer course from the British School of Etiquette.
And I must say it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made and one of the best investments I've made in my own training and development.
Now, words alone will not describe the transformation and the positive path that I have traveled with the British School of Etiquette.
I found I learned a lot from the lessons this time I came.
The last few days with the British School of Etiquette have been fantastic.
And what I've learned now is really beyond my expectations.
This is the most rewarding experience and the best investment I have made this year.
It was just great. I learned so much, and when I go back to Belgium I will incorporate a lot of it into my day-to-day life and business.
It's been absolutely wonderful for the whole week that we were here.
I feel transformed, and I feel like blowing a trumpet and tell people, come and do this school. This class is the best. This is the best school ever.
You should take it. It will change your life immediately.
I am now able to teach other people how to bring the best of them.
Thank you.
Thank you, BSc.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.